Boom, we got a big, fat,
What the
new
fuck?
#1, Brett.
In
Bang.
September?
We have a brand new #1 film this week. What does that
With
say
a
up there?
bullet. Look at that.
Within 100.
Has there ever been a bigger disparity between 1 and 2?
$111 million.
It did it. It did the damn thing.
Weekend for Warner Brothers' new Tim Burton sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
Wow.
That's
wow.
a humongous number, Brett, and that's just the domestic
That's just
figure.
domestic.
And I know that bad boy's adding another 40-50 million this weekend.
That's right. On track for another 45-50. So last week, Deadline was projecting 100 to 110 domestic, and we were like, whoa, no way.
No way.
And even Warner Brothers was urging a little bit of caution. They had projections at 80 million domestic. Joe, this thing made 111 domestic opening weekend, and it's already up to 160 worldwide going into its second weekend, which, foregone conclusion, it will be tops at the box office for a second straight week, easy.
This is only one of 4 or 5 movies this year to open over $100 million domestic.
Third. I don't. You can check me on Dune. Definitely Inside Out 2. Definitely Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think Dune opened over 100
I think
domestic.
there might have,
it was 80.
Should have prepped for the movie podcast.
But there's
90, one or two more, but
sure.
This is one of the biggest openings of the year.
I think what I'm driving. You can check me. I think this is the third movie to open in 100. Yeah, opening over 100 is hard.
Yes,
particularly in 2024. That's hard. And Beetlejuice did the damn thing with room to spare. This is the first September movie to clear 100 in its opening weekend since It in 2017. It went on to make 700 million worldwide. If that is, if that is an example, if it stays, on track for that. And similarly, it is the second. It's on track to be the second best weekend in September since It as well.
All right,
so it's kind of like
massive movie,
but biggest September movie in 7 years.
Warner Brothers did it all right. First, they isolated IP that apparently was still valuable and fun to people. They brought the Tim Burton himself back, and Tim Burton found himself again, which we'll talk about later in our reviews. But they cast Jenny Ortega from Wednesday, who worked with Burton. And Jenny has the massive social media following, brings in the young. And plus, Catherine O'Hara is humongous, of course, from her whole entire career, but most recently, Schitt's Creek has continued her popularity. Like, that's a massive for a particular
I had underestimated the Schitt's Creek element. And I had a couple people in the office this week telling me about, there was a Schitt's Creek Easter egg in Beetlejuice that I completely missed because I didn't watch that show. So I was like, I forgot about Schitt's Creek.
O'Hara's beloved, and Winona Ryder is beloved for her whole career, but then she's had the massive career
Stranger
resurgence.
Things. You're right.
Stranger Things.
Right.
So it's all of these things lining up. Plus, I don't know about you guys, but I got hyped to just walking around town and seeing pictures of Beetlejuice on the IMAX and seeing pictures of the sand snake and seeing the guys with the little heads. The person started getting excited. Like, I love Beetlejuice stuff. It's getting Halloween time. The weather's changing. I love this big opening for Beetlejuice. How about that?
Love
big win for Zaslav and everybody over at Warner Brothers Discovery. Congrats. Congrats.
I love seeing this as well, and I think you're right. We'll talk about how effective it was in terms of the movie itself, but for marketing, combining the Wednesday Ortega Gen Z goth audience with the original Burton audience, with the Catherine O'Hara audience, with the Stranger Things audience through Winona, and somehow keeping everybody happy, and nobody feeling like they were underserved, is a real miracle of movie marketing. And and then it shows. It's like at the end of the day, things are not. Sometimes you'll get the numbers and you're like, what? And then sometimes you'll get the numbers and you're like, of course, they did it the right way. They combined these different niche audiences into one massive audience, and they all came out. And that's a huge opening.
And you know what else we got to just name check before we move on, Brett? Is it got good reviews, which is which
still matters.
It's like, it's a secret element to box office.
Still matters.
It is so important, and we never mention it. If the reviews were really bad, it would have made a lot less money. It was people liked the movie, and that's why another reason it did so well.
So if Beetlejuice stays on course, and the first It seems to be the best analog. So if it stays on course and it ends up probably somewhere in the 700 to 800 million range total, it's got a shot at being the fourth biggest movie of the year. Inside Out 2, nobody's catching for number 1. Deadpool and Wolverine probably got a lock on 2. Particularly, we'll talk about in a second that Joker is getting a hit in the projections right now. So Deadpool and Wolverine probably has a lock on 2. Despicable Me 4 has been slyly climbing over the past couple weeks. It's closing in on $1 billion. So Despicable Me 4 probably has a lock on 3. But
the most valuable franchise in Hollywood.
Truly.
Despicable. No, it's not even a joke.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's like if you need $1 billion that year on your books, like, all right, we got to do Despicable Me.
Because I was at first, because it was a little bit of a slow starter relative to the previous ones, but it came out at the right time where it's been in these like these low weeks. People have been like, oh yeah, let's go see Despicable Me 4. And
there it is. Like,
no, it's right there.
8 last week. It was 9. It's always
hung
adding.
in the top 10. It's been hanging in the top 10 and just like amassing more. So I don't know if it makes $1 billion. It's like at 9-10 right now, but it's possible that it gets to $1 billion. Regardless, it'll probably end the year at number 3. Depending on how Moana 2 does. But man, Beetlejuice
could
top
end the year,
5 for the
top
year.
6.
I think, yeah,
I would
top
never
5.
have guessed that in a million years.
That's crazy.
It's not like Beetlejuice 1 was when it came out some massive box office smash. It like did well. It was fine.
Right. It was like Pee-wee's. It was like low budge, nice return.
But I guess now when you think about it, everybody and their mother's seen Beetlejuice.
Yes,
it's like it's a huge deal. So
so congratulations to Tim Burton, to the cast, to the whole team. I will say first and foremost, before I even get into the movie itself, Burton just starts off on the right foot with me. He gets so much credit for being, I think, probably the only major American genre director left who is still relying on practical effects, production design, costumes, makeup, prosthetics. A guy who does not just leave big gaps in the script and the direction and say, well, we'll fix it in post once the CGI guys get involved. A guy who is not just sort of doing the whole movie on some sort of massive green screen in Pinewood Studios. Someone who thinks about looks, someone who is in touch with the realities of making effects, making movies, and a guy who seems sort of patient with the process, not a guy who is like panicking to get it done on time, and that's when the CGI has to sort of fix the holes or something. This is a movie that much like his great run in the 80s and 90s, just feels so sort of planned and executed perfectly in terms of its look and its style and its aesthetic. And it works. It's not just a nostalgia trip. It feels dynamic and present. It looks great. I love, there's really nothing, the one thing I love in movies is when somebody nails like PG-13 thrills and chills. There's something so pure about that and so exciting about that, where there's nothing really sacrificed by it. He's not sacrificing edge or sacrificing, and look, I love Terrifier. I love when movies go for it, but we're talking about sort of judging a movie on its own merits and its own sort of standards. And man, when Burton nails PG-13 thrills and chills, there's something so pure and cinematic about it. There's something that reminds you about why you love the movies, why you go to the movies. And all of that is here. There's a scene early on where Monica Bellucci she is like an evil demon lady in the underworld, and she's been like cut into pieces, but she reawakens, and then she has to like piece herself back. She like Frankenstein's herself. She like pieces herself back together and like staples all her body parts back together, and it's just such classic Burton. It's so much fun. Michael Keaton nails it. Catherine O'Hara nails it. Winona is great. None of them have lost a step. They solve the Jeffrey Jones problem in the best way possible. I'm not going to give it away, but they solved it in the most Beetlejuice way possible. And if you don't know what I mean by the Jeffrey Jones problem, Jeffrey Jones is the great actor from the original Beetlejuice and Amadeus and tons of other things. Was arrested on child pornography charges and then summarily has not been seen in Hollywood since. But they solved the problem of what to do with his character in a very Beetlejuice way, and it really works. So there's that. Among the newcomers, I thought Justin Theroux was a standout. Theroux is great. Theroux is funny. Theroux went to the Stella School of Comedy. He worked with David Wayne and Michael Showalter. He knows how to do. He knows that the funniest thing is like an actor sincerely committing to like intensity in a funny context. Like he's not trying to like ham up the jokes or amplify the jokes. He is trying to give you like a dedicated, intense performance in a comedic context because he trusts Burton and he knows that's going to really be funny, and it is. He is I would love to see more Thoreau. I mean, he is a finely tuned comedy hunk. He is ready to rock in your high concept comedies, and he's great in this. Now, Jenna Ortega, who I love, sadly doesn't get like a lot of fun stuff to do in this movie. I think she was a little underutilized. I get her inclusion from a marketing standpoint, because I think she brought in the Gen Z crowd, the Wednesday crowd, but I think she has a lot more to give and could have been better used in this movie. There is a scene late in the movie where there's sort of a musical sequence that is reminiscent of the Harry Belafonte musical sequences from the original, and she really starts to come alive and emote, and I'm like, yeah, of course, Ortega can do a lot more. They have her do a sort of lukewarm version of the Winona character from the original, and it's not as sort of edgy or fun as the Winona character. No. It's just a little more sort of complainy and like, oh, mom, oh, dad. So I love Ortega. I wish she was given more to do, and overall, that's my really only complaint with the movie is at times it feels like it has a foot in two worlds where it is trying to please the sort of old school Burton heads, and it's trying to bring in the Gen Z Wednesday crowd. And overall, I think overall the movie is effective, but there are moments where it's like kind of like there's a couple scenes where I just sort of tune out because I'm like, oh, this is for the Gen Z kids, and I can kind of tune out for a second. But that's a very minor gripe. Overall, this is a really fun sequel. Definitely worth seeing in theaters. I would say it's Burton's best movie since Frankenweenie in 2012, and his best live action movie since Sweeney Todd in 2007. So definitely a highlight of this sort of late career Burton, and you should go see it because I think Burton's got his mojo back. He's hopefully post Johnny Depp, and maybe we get a little late career Burton resurgence.
Yeah, love Burton post Depp, post Disney. This is Warner Brothers Burton, and he's doing Burton stuff. It looked great. Michael Keaton comes back as Beetlejuice, and he is utilized great. It's a joy to see Keaton back doing his thing, just like it's great to see Burton back doing his thing. It's great to see Winona and Catherine O'Hara. They were both, fun. The movie is totally good. It's like less plot-wise uneven or choppy than the brilliant first movie, but like it doesn't quite deliver as hard as the first movie. That being said, it definitely delivers in the fun area. Brett, like you were doing the best since, and I thought this was his most fun movie since like Mars Attacks.
Yeah, I'll give you
what
that.
I mean, like
on
the fun level.
Yep.
This is just like a lot of smiles. I loved Beetlejuice's minions, like Bob, like the guys with the little heads, and they have the big yellow jackets, and at one point, well, Bretton said no spoilers, but they're used fun.
All the underworld stuff
great
is great.
Imagery,
there's a lot more underworld stuff.
Beautiful imagery.
Yeah.
The underworld stuff looked great. The costumes were super duper fun. How about not really a spoiler, it's at the beginning of the film. A character dies and there's a funeral at the house from Beetlejuice, and they drape the house with black.
Gorgeous image.
It's a beautiful image. It's like Tarkovsky, or it's like, it was gorgeous.
It was stunning. A lot of stunning imagery.
A lot of the great shots. At one point, Jenna Ortega bumps into a neighbor, and he has a treehouse, but the tree isn't just like in a treehouse. It's like in a Burton tree, and it spirals up romantically and gothically.
It's like the tree from Sleepy Hollow.
Yep. Yeah. He does all of that, those affects and FX, and they all look wonderful. He sets. Who cares that it's a contrivance? He sets the whole entire third act to be on Halloween. It's a wedding on Halloween.
Love it.
It's like great. So now we get to see Burton doing Halloween stuff like we all want him to. So I thought it was
play into his strengths.
Great for all those reasons.
Into his strengths.
I don't think it's like some great masterpiece. I just think it's a totally fun, unexpectedly good sequel to Beetlejuice that I didn't know I need, but now you know what? I will happily take a Beetlejuice.
So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out in theaters. It's looking like it's gonna have another big weekend, so go be part of that. See it in theaters.